Hello, today I'm going to be building a PC out of some second-hand parts and some new stuff as well. This is about $500 odd we spent on this. So you may have noticed I've got a GoPro on my head. It'll be from my first person. So let's see what this works out like. So as you can see, this is a little bit of a mix of, these are second-hand old parts. We have a lovely, actually gorgeous, metallic blue fractal design case there. We've got a 550 XT GPU. This is actually a 3400G, which for whatever reason didn't come actually in a CPU box, but the pins all look okay, so hopefully it actually works. Just going to pop that back in the motherboard for a sec. The motherboard is a B450 Gaming Plus from MSI, and it does have an I/O shield, which is great. Stock cooler from AMD. I've got some Corsair Vengeance DDR4. This is, I think, 3000 megahertz. 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes or 16 gig. The only things that I didn't get secondhand were the SSD, so 2.5-inch SSD, which is 480 gigs, and the PSU as well, because for me personally, I don't like buying second-hand PSUs because I always get afraid that they might set on fire. And also, I don't like to buy second-hand hard drives because, I mean, God knows what you're going to find on a second-hand hard drive. Just don't do it, buy new. So yeah, here we go. So I'm just going to move some of these things out of the way. I haven't actually got a box to put this on, but what I'll do is I'll take you through the steps of what you need to do. So this is a Ryzen 5 3400G, which for those of you who know about this CPU, it does have built-in graphics. AMD call them APUs. It's just like a branding thing for this line of CPUs that has the built-in Vega graphics. But I've also got a graphics card as well that I'm going to be putting into this build. So what you want to do is you want to find on this little corner here, there's a little triangle, and then there's a little dot just kind of here on the CPU socket. Drop it onto the socket nice and gently. It should just drop into place like that, and then pull your handle down like this, and then there's your CPU in place. It should be absolutely solid. If it's not, then just lift the handle back up and reseat it. You want to be very, very careful with your pins. So this wants to go on the back of the motherboard for you to screw in your stock cooler. So this is Noctua thermal paste. When you're applying thermal paste, people kind of do it in two different ways. They either apply the thermal paste in like a little blob and then just put the cooler straight on, or they'll apply thermal paste and then kind of spread it out a little bit. With me, I just like to put a little blob in the middle like that. So you can kind of see, it doesn't really need too much, just a little blob right in the middle. So you want to seat your cooler like this, AMD facing this way, and then when you're screwing in the 4 different screws here, you want to do sort of across from each other. Don't go sort of round like this. Do this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. And you don't need to over tighten. So I'll start with that one there and then go across here to this one, just so the spread of pressure is nice and even across your CPU. So this wants to plug into this area here where it says CPU fan 1. You can kind of see on this bit there's like 2 little bits of plastic, and then if you look at the little part that you plug into, there's this little part here, so that wants to just go in like that, and like I say, it will only fit in one way, and then just tuck this cable in down there out of the way. So now it's time to put the RAM into your build. Now with pretty much every motherboard that I've ever come across, you can see this little diagram here, and this is actually a diagram of your RAM slots, and it tells you which RAM slots to use first. Now this motherboard comes with 4 RAM slots, but we're only using 2 RAM sticks. So what this is telling us is the DIMMA2 and DIMMB2 slots are the ones we want to go into first, which on this motherboard are red, so it gives it a little bit more of an indication of which ones to go with first. If you're using all 4, then you can, it doesn't really matter what order it goes into, but if you're only using 2, it's this one and this one first, as indicated by the little diagram. So you just pull back these little tabs, there and there, And then these will only go in one way. You can see kind of the notch there. So if I try to put it in that way, it won't go in because the notch isn't lined up with this just here. So turn it round and then line it up, slide it in, and then just give it a little push. And it clicks into place. And then your second one as well, give it a little push. And again, it'll just click into place right there. So that right now is basically everything that we need to do on the motherboard outside of the case. So what I'm going to do now is prep the case. So I'll move this to one side and we get to have a look inside of this gorgeous sort of plasticky metallic blue case. Unscrew the thumb screws and then this just slides off like this. So I'm going to take the back off as well. Unscrew your thumb screws, both of them, and then just move those out of the way. You can see on the back of the case there's a lot of cables. So these are case cables. So you can see on the front of the case here we've got 2 USB slots, headphones, microphone, and then your on button there as well. And I think that's a reset button. And they correspond to these cables here, which is USB, this is your HD audio, and these are all your power cables. So you've got your power switch, you've got your reset switch, HD LED, so there must be some LEDs in this somewhere, and then power LED plus and minus. We've also got some fans you can see on the front that come with it. So you can see these little fan headers as well. There's already been a little bit of cable management on here, so I'm probably just going to remove that. You can also see on this case, it comes with this, which is a tray for a HDD, but we're using an SSD, so we don't actually need that, so I'm going to take that off. And it also comes with a tray if you've got a DVD drive that you want to put in there, or a CD drive. You can take these 2 sections off the front and put them in. But it looks like this has been riveted on, so I can't actually take that off without doing some serious damage to these rivets. So I'm just going to leave that one on, but I will take off this. You can see on the bottom here, there's some screws there that are holding that into place. So I'm just going to remove this filter and then unscrew this. Going to be several types of screws as well. They're all dead tiny, but they all have slight differences to them. If you're buying a new case, you normally get a little package of different screws. When you're buying second-hand, you don't always get them, and you sort of need to either buy them yourself. So that's all the screws out. I can now remove that HDD tray. It just don't, I mean, you can leave it in if it doesn't bother you, but it just makes the build a little bit messy. And you can see as well on this bottom grill, if it's in place, then it could maybe slightly disrupt the airflow there. So I'm just going to remove it. So I'm not going to put this filter back into place on the bottom yet, because I will be screwing the PSU into the bottom. So I don't want to get that in the way. So we're just going to sit it like this. You can see, like I said, this comes with some built-in fans. Most cases do have some sort of fan inside, but if you are going to put fans in, you can either put them at the front on this one, you can put some in the top if you want, and then one at the back. Normally I do like to put an exhaust fan at the back of the case, but for this particular build that would take us over the sort of 500, 550 mark that we're looking for, so we've not got one in. So with this particular motherboard, the IO shield doesn't come ready attached. Some motherboards do have an IO shield ready attached, some don't. I mean, there's no better or worse. It's just sometimes they're attached and sometimes they're not. If they're not attached, then I tend to put this in place first. So just in this gap at the back of the motherboard, pop it in, and it should just sort of like click like that. Clicks into place, and then you can see inside there's these 9 little things that we call standoffs. Some of them have got a hole in that you will screw into. This particular one here doesn't have a hole in. This is used to have alignment with your motherboard, to make sure your motherboard is in the right place, and to help you line up the rest of the standoffs with the screw holes on your motherboard. So what I can do is pick it up. I tend to pick it up by the cooler if there's one in place, or if not, just by the sides, and then gently get it into place. So what you want to do is sort of line up with the IO shield and also with, like I say, with the holes. You can see I've used that standoff there that doesn't have the hole in to line up that hole there. You can see the IO shield is lined up nicely and the holes are all screwed in there. So I need to get my screws. Like I say, sometimes when you have a second-hand case, they don't always come with screws. This one didn't come with screws, so I'm just using some that I had from a previous build. So again, as with the cooler, you just want these screws to be firm but not tight, because you don't want to put any pressure on your motherboard or any unnecessary pressure on your motherboard. A magnetic screwdriver is your best friend while you're building a PC, because some of the places that you need to get into are quite tight, so it's quite hard to sort of line things up with your fingers. So it's easier just to line up on the magnetic screwdriver like that and then gently drop the screw into place. Okay, so next thing I'm going to put in is a PSU. Like I say, this isn't second hand, just because I get personally quite paranoid about buying second-hand PSUs, but I mean, other people don't have an issue with it. If you are looking to save a little bit of money on this particular build, maybe get a second-hand PSU. This is a Corsair TX 550M, which is 550 watts, and it's modular as well. So it comes with some screws, comes with some cable ties for your cable management and all the different cables you need there. Now it does have some cables already attached, which I think for this particular build is probably going to be the only ones we need. Yeah, so this is your CPU cable. This is the power cable for your motherboard. The other cables that we're going to need are going to be in this pouch here. So we need this, which is a SATA power cable, which we're going to use to power our SSD. We're also going to need this, which is a PCIe power cable, which we're going to use to power the GPU. This cable we don't need, so I'm going to put that back in the box. And then this is just another SATA cable if you had more things that you need to power using SATA cables, which we don't need either. So I'm going to plug these in first before I actually place my PSU, just so that I'm not sort of making it hard on myself trying to plug things in later on. Although with this particular case, I don't think it'll be a big issue anyway. It's this end here that you want to plug in, not the end where the cables have the sort of detachable bit there. So you can see here, this is peripheral and SATA on this side. There's a PCIe and CPU on this side. So this one just goes into there. You can see it's got like 4 bits. It's got 4 here. I can only go in one way, and it just clicks. And then this for your SATA cable. This only has 6. So you can see there, I'm just going to plug that in there. You can see on the back end where the plug goes in for your power. So that wants to be going through that hole there. But what you want to do with your PSU is the fan, you want it to point down over, so it's pushing air out of the case. You don't want it pushing hot air into the case. So you want to turn this upside down like this. That way the fan is pushing air through these holes here. And then you just want to put this in place like that. Okay, so I've got my screws that came with the PSU, and you'll notice with PSU screws they tend to have, I want to say pentagon, maybe hexagon shape on the actual screw head, but yeah, they're all the different screws, although very sort of similar size, tend to have slightly different shapes about them. Again, using your magnetic screwdriver is an absolute must when you're doing a PC build. Now that the PSU is in place, I'm actually going to plug some of these cables in and do a little bit of cable management before I plug in the GPU and the SSD. So what I usually start with is the big one, which is a big 24 pin, and that wants to go into the motherboard just here. So with this particular cable, I'm going to feed it through this hole at the bottom, and then you can see it wants to go into this socket here through this hole. So I'm just going to feed it through like that. It's a little bit tight, but that's fine. And then you can see this clip wants to clip in on this side. So you just want to bend this round and then push in quite firmly like that, and then just, yeah, that's all in place. Next, I'm going to plug in my CPU cable. Now the CPU cable, sometimes, yeah, this one comes apart. Sometimes motherboards just want 4 pins, sometimes they want an 8 pin. This particular one does want an 8 pin. It goes in just at the top up there. I don't know if you can actually, there, it wants to go into. So again, I'm just going to feed this through this hole at the bottom, round there and into the top hole there. You can see the clips want to clip in there. So just turn it and firmly push it into place, and it just sort of clicks into place, and then just sort of push the wire back through, so you can manage that a little bit later. With the PCIe, we'll leave that until we actually put the GPU in, and then the SATA cable as well needs to go into the SSD, so we'll put that in just a minute. What we're going to do now though is look at some of these other cables. So what I'll do is I'll start with these little fan headers. So actually on the motherboard we've got system fan headers. We've got one here just underneath the motherboard power, and we've got one there and one there as well. What I'm going to do is plug this one in at the top. With this particular one, you can see it's only got like 3 holes, whereas where we're going to plug it into, it has like 4 little pins. But it will only go in one way, and you just want to plug it into 3 of those 4, which on this is the bottom 3. Just goes in nice and easily there. And then get hold of your other fan plug there. Now, I'm going to plug that in just underneath, so I'm going to put it through there, and as you can see, it does only go in one way. It's just going to go into 3 of the pins rather than all 4, and that will power these fans at the front here, which will draw cool air into the PC case, and then it will exhaust probably upwards. So next, in order to power the USBs at the front here, I've got this blue one, as you can see. This goes in usually at the bottom. What else have we got here? Oh, so we've got one USB, which I think is USB 3, which is the blue one, and we've got a black USB, which will correspond to that black one there. So they both want to plug in at the bottom of the motherboard. So I'm going to go through this hole at the bottom again, and you can see there's actually on this motherboard 3 different options for USB. There's JUSB 1, JUSB 2, and then the bigger USB port, which is for the blue one. The blue one just wants to plug in there. Okay, nice and firmly, just push it in without bending the pins, and then I'm just going to plug this other USB into the JUSB 1. You'll notice that on the actual plug there's one little space that's blanked out, which on the pins here you'll notice that one pin is sort of missing, so it will only go in one way. Line it up, it pushes in quite easily. With the HD audio cable, that HD audio cable wants to plug in all the way in that bottom corner of the motherboard. So there's a little hole there. I'm just going to push it through that hole, and of course the PSU is in the way. I think that's part of the thing when you're building a PC, is because, you know, not every single case is exactly the same, because not every PSU is exactly the same. Sometimes you will find that even though you've screwed something in, you might need to get a cable past it or something like this that's a little bit unexpected. You just need to sort of adjust to that. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to move the PSU slightly out of the way, and then this wants to plug it in this bottom corner where it says JAUD, and that plugs into the HD audio. Just, you can see on the HD audio cable there is one blanked out section which corresponds with the pins. It'll only go in one way, and just firmly push it in, and then I'm going to push my PSU in back underneath there and screw the PSU in once again. So the last cable we've got to plug in right now is all these little power ones. Power switch, got reset switch, power LED plus and minus, and HD DLED plus and minus. So they want to go through this hole at the bottom that a couple of the cables have gone through. And what I'll do is I will lay this down to try and make that a little bit easier. So the first one I'm going to put in is power LED. This can get a little bit sort of fiddly because they are all quite small. HDD LED underneath. Now power switch will go next to the power LEDs, and then the reset switch will go directly under the power switch. So there you go, everything is all plugged in for those now. So normally on a case there's something here that you can screw your SSD into. You can see that there's a couple of different places for holes. There's 4 holes there, and there, and then on the sides, 2 on that side, 2 on that side. They'll be different, on your particular case, there'll be different places that you can screw this into place. So unfortunately I'm going to have to screw this back in, which I didn't want to do, because I wanted to take that out actually. So I'm actually going to have to screw this back into place in here. I wanted to take it out for better airflow reasons, but the SSD won't actually fit into place up there. So I'm going to have to screw it into this tray, and then this tray will fit into here. So these are actually the same sort of shape screws that we use to screw the SSD in with, that I'm using to screw the storage tray back in with. What I've done is I've screwed in these 3 first because they've got like dedicated holes. This last hole to screw into, you can kind of see here, it's slightly smaller than these airflow holes, but you don't want to mistake, and you don't want to screw into an airflow hole. You want to make sure it's the right one. Right, so we've got that screwed back in again. So what I want to do is we're going to use these tiny little screws to get the SSD screwed onto this tray, and it sits on there using the 4 holes on the bottom and the 4 holes that are lined up on this tray. This is where your magnetic screwdriver absolutely comes into play, because you need about 3 hands to do this. So just line the first hole up, and what I do is I just leave that a little bit loose so that it makes it easier to line the other holes up as well. And I'll do the one that's directly across. So this is the cable you want to use, which is your SATA cable for your power. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to feed it through the back, so through the hole at the bottom, and pull it through, just so that I can keep the part of the case that you're going to be able to see through the clear plastic nice and clean, because the SATA cable is actually going to go in there to power. And then this is what plugs into the motherboard. It's got a L-shape plug, so it only goes in one way. That's for so you can transfer the data to your PC. Feed that through there, push the tray in to place, and that just clicks into place like that. And then I'm going to plug the SATA cable in from this side, and again this has got a little bit of an L shape to it, so it will only plug in one way. Then the bit that connects to your motherboard plugs in over here. So what you can see, it says SATA 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then this will be 5 and 6 I assume. I'm going to plug into SATA 1, so feed that cable in there, and again L shape, so it will only plug in one way. Push it into place. So we are almost there. All we need to get into place now is our GPU. So when you're putting your GPU into place, it sort of goes in like this. So sometimes motherboards have 2 PCIe slots for your memory card, sometimes they've only got 1. This has got 2, but we're going to use the top one just here. Now what you want to do is just make sure you push that back there, and then when the GPU is slotted into place, this will click up and lock your GPU into place. But the first thing you want to do is just measure where you need to screw it in. We can see over here, it's these 2 screws that need to come out. So I'm just going to unscrew that one, and then take that little shield out, and unscrew this one, and again take that little shield out there, and then your GPU just slots into place. There is a little notch like we saw on the RAM. There's a notch there and a notch there at the back, which line up with this area and this area on the PCIe slot, so you can't put it in the wrong way around essentially. So just line it up, push it into place, it just clicks into place, and like I said, that little thing at the back just pops up and holds it into place there. And then you want to take these screws that you've just taken out and screw it in over here as well. Just line it up. I put the top one in first because, as you can see, it'll move up and down this way, and I just push it against the screw and firmly tighten that. Again, don't over tighten, just make it nice and firm, and then that second one goes right into place. Now what we need to do is power the GPU. This is the power cable for the GPU that we saw earlier, the PCIe power cable. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to push it through the hole at the bottom, feed it through nicely, and then I'm going to push it through this hole at the side here and just feed it through. So when you're plugging power into your GPU, you'll notice with this GPU it's got an 8-hole slot there, and there's 8 pins on this, but sometimes it only needs 6, sometimes it needs 8, sometimes it'll need 2 sets of it, sometimes it'll need 3 sets of it, which means you need 2 cables, but for this particular one we just need 2. Now, because if I had this one here plugged in, then I've got this other plug sort of hanging underneath. What I don't want to happen is for the fans underneath to hit this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this end one in. So you just put the 6 and the 2 together. There's a little sort of piece of plastic that they just fit together nicely like that at the bottom. The little clip there at the top. It will only go in one way. Just firmly push it into place, it'll click into place. And now what I can do is just pull that cable back through at the back and get that tucked nicely away. And that now is basically your build. The only thing left to do is cable management at the back. So I'm going to keep this area as clean as possible by tucking all the cables through there as much as they can. Sometimes on certain cases this area will be like closed off, so you won't actually see it. So what a lot of people do is they just sort of like bird's nest cables together in this kind of space, which, you know, is one way to do it. But I think it's better to keep this as clear as possible. And then what you want to do is do your cable management on this side over here. So I will do the cable management nice and quickly, and we will just time lapse through this section. Now this case doesn't actually have an awful lot of cable management sort of loops or anything. Sometimes you get like loads of loops that you can tie cables to. Sometimes you get Velcro. But obviously with this being a second-hand and cheaper case, all we've got is these 2 little things here, which I actually think didn't probably come with the case. They've probably been stuck on afterwards. So what I'm going to do is try and do my best with these. If you are interested in good cable management, then Sean's done a great video on our channel. He's very, very good at cable management. I'll link that video in the description below. So there you have it. There's my first person $500 or less build with, you know, mainly second-hand parts, couple of brand new ones in there. All you need to do now is plug it in. I don't even know if it's going to light up. Oh, there's a little bit of light on the fans at the front. Nice. Probably not getting ultra settings out of most games, but you will get a pretty decent gameplay experience out of probably like medium, maybe some high settings on some games. It's got 480 gigabyte SSD in it, so you could probably get a really good handful of games in there as well. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to see more. Leave a comment in the section below. I'd love to know what you think of this video. Do you like the first person GoPro video style? Do you like this build? Do you like this metallic blue case? Let me know in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another video from us. And if you look over there, there'll be another video that we know that you'll love. So thank you very much for watching.